are officially live on Facebook for the Tuesday edition of the Not Your Average Investor Show. Today, we are talking about what it feels like to hold on to rental properties beyond the recession and the things that happen beyond the recession. I'm your host, Pablo Gonzalez. With me, as always, the man that I like to call GC because of his genius concepts, because he knows how to generate cash flows, because he's a great co-host, because he's got Gucci calcetines.
Yeah, you want to see him for that?
Are you going to do it?
Yeah.
Are you going to do it again?
We got
this man,
my son Cameron, who just turned 8 years old.
Always wearing socks of his kids. And because his name is Gregg Cohen. Say hello, Gregg.
Hello, everybody. Great to be with you.
Happy birthday to Cameron,
yes.
who turned 8 over the weekend. Very cool guy. Madison the Magnificent, you're back on camera. Say hello to the audience.
Hello, everybody.
All right, now back off camera. Madison is here to answer any of your problems, anything that you want to know in the chat. You can correspond with her because this is a community-driven show. We want you chatting. We want you asking questions in the Q&A. And if you're listening to us on a podcast while you're walking your dog, or cooking, or going for a drive, we love having you here. If you're watching us on YouTube on the big screen or on the small screen, we love having you here. But what you really should do, just once in your life, live a little.
Just once.
Go to nyais.com. Register for one of the live shows. It'll go on your calendar. You can show up whenever you want, and you can be part of. Come on,
Come on.
Come
Come on.
come on down. Come on in.
Come on
It's
down.
fine. You can be part of the roll call. You ready for the roll call?
I'm ready.
All right, roll call time. We got Madison welcoming everybody to the Not Your Average Investor Show. We got the ringmaster of the Not Your Average Investor Show community, Drew Barnhill. We got our leadoff hitter for the Not Your Average Investor Show community, John Henning, saying good afternoon. We got Shelly Johnson from B-Town. Greetings all the way from Bradenton. Good to have you. We got Miguel Angel Sanudo, our Andalusian. I don't know if he is Andalusian, but he lives in Andalusia. Our Spanish brethren over there saying hola, everyone. We got everybody knows Noah Randari. Hello, everyone. Greetings from California. We got Vivian Brick is back from Santa Monica. Good to have you back. We got Matthew Clark. He's back. Hello from Tampa. We got Leslie Wilson. She's coming in from Denver. Good to have you back, Leslie. We got Leonard Lee, the Iron Man of IRL meetups. I like it. Good morning and good afternoon. We got Nancy Ruano from Jacksonville, Florida. Nancy, first time?
New name?
She's saying hola.
New name?
New name?
Is that a new name?
New name? Is it a new name? Pew, pew, new name alert. Nancy, good to have you. We love having you here. We got Stevie B in the house. Stevie B is back. That's a name we haven't seen in a minute. Good to have you, buddy. We got our regular returning Rosalind Riley. Good morning, everybody from Marietta, California. We got the patriarch and the matriarch of the first family of the Not Your Average Investor Show, Ken and Carolyn Moline. We salute you.
Is it tip or is it a salute?
It's for the common. Get over
I
it.
always mess that up. I'm sorry
on,
to the first family.
We got Kathleen Lubin. Hello from Boynton Beach.
New name? New name?
New name?
Is that a new name? What is the new name alert, by the way? Okay.
Good to have you, Kathleen. We got Aaron O'Neill, former
Yes.
lurker. Aaron O'Neill is fully invested in the house after we met her at the IRL meetup. Aaron, so glad to see you typing in the chat and saying hello to us. Always love seeing your name. And we got Bill Shields doing me a favor, going back to Buenas tardes, amigos. Buenas tardes, Bill Shields. Thank you for staying in my native tongue. We got Denny Davis saying Guten Tag. Now that makes sense.
You can handle that.
I can handle Guten Tag. I've seen a Volkswagen commercial before. It's fine. And Denny is in Germany, so it's a little bit more congruent. I appreciate you, Denny. All right. That was an animated roll call.
I love it. Love it.
I love it. And this is why when you're watching on YouTube, when you're listening on the podcast, you want to hear your name. I mean, you might get a nickname. You know, we want to say new name alert.
You know, cheers. You want to go where everybody knows your name, and you want to go where everybody knows your nickname too.
You want to go. And speaking of nicknames, we got Anthony Ditta. Tony D is in the house.
There we go.
Hello, friends from, I believe it's in Jupiter, Florida, or Juneau. One of those wonderful
Jupiter.
South Florida beach towns, Jupiter or Planet, whatever you want to call it. GC.
My man.
I'm excited for today's conversation.
That makes two of us.
What about you, Madison? You in? You excited? 3. It makes 3. All right, cool. A couple of weeks ago, we started this multi-part series. This is a mini series.
Soon to be picked up on Netflix.
Soon to be picked up on Netflix, TBD, about how Gregg and his 3 business partners have grown this 300 property rental portfolio. They started in 2006 in a time where everybody thought real estate prices were too high. Nobody knew, or, some people knew, not this guy, knew that a recession was coming.
Not me.
And we all know the end of the story, right? So we started at the beginning. I think that we can give, I'm going to pause real quick because we got a new name alert.
Nice.
We got, and it's a new name that I'm going to have a trouble pronouncing. It's your favorite.
I'm excited for this.
Awais Imam from Jacksonville, Florida.
Oh, fantastic.
Awais,
Local here.
Yeah, local. Pew, pew. New name alert.
New name.
New name.
I love that. Is that a new name?
New name.
Okay, it's a new name.
I love it. Aves is how I pronounce it. Aves Imam from Jacksonville, Florida. Thank you for the correction.
Welcome,
I much
Aves.
appreciate that. And welcome to the show. Hope that these new names hope you all return. We love having you here. This is a community-driven show. By the way, go make a friend in the chat. It's gonna be great. It's not just us that you're here for. It's for the community. All right. You know what? Denny Davis has a question in the Q&A before we get started.
Okay, sure.
Is this when Jacksonville Wealth Builders, JWB, the name comes through, or does it happen in the final
It
episode?
actually does during the time frame that we're going to be talking
All
about.
right, Denny. Denny asked, how did the name come about?
Okay.
We're going to get to that.
Yep.
Right. Let's catch everybody up. We had a couple of new names. You started in 2006, GC. Give me kind of like a quick rundown of when you started in real estate and kind of like get us to this second part of a 3-part series, right? We started 2006 to 2010. Yep. Catch us up to 2010, man.
Yeah. So in the beginning, I was 23 years old and I was so excited because clicked for me, the 5 profit centers that we talk about rental property investing. For me, it just clicked pretty early on. And I began to understand how this asset class could pay me 5 different ways. And I started to look at the value of doing that when I was young and having time on my side. And I just said simply, if I can learn and master this and I can build a rental property portfolio early on, well, I can still have my active real estate business growing and hopefully making a lot of money and all that good stuff. But the big value for me was that if I at 23 years old started to build a portfolio of 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 rental properties, well, in 10 years or in 15 years, I would be able to control my time. And for me, I always dreamed of having a wife and kids and being able to do what I wanted to do. And I was willing to do whatever I needed to do at 23 to start that process so that by the time I was 40, that I'd be able to make those decisions for myself. And so in the beginning in 2006, I was so excited about building this rental property portfolio. And, at the same time, of course, building this real estate business as well. In 2006, everybody thought the market was going up. I mean, you didn't talk to anybody who thought that real estate values were going down.
There was no conversation of is it too heated? Is it too high?
No.
Okay.
No, okay. It wasn't. There was always a reason why. Well, when something actually started to come down in 2006, 2007, people described it as a gully. It's a gully. This is a little gully here. Real estate values always go up. And, I was 23. I had read about how the 5 profit centers paid me in rental property investing, but when I was not an expert in home price appreciation. There were very few experts in home price appreciation as evidenced by the entire country, almost everybody being wrong about how home values don't always go up. But for me, I just assumed values were going to go up. I remember looking at those pro formas in the beginning when I would buy those rental properties and I would say, well, geez, I'm going to get 4 or 5 or 6% appreciation year over year. So I was just like everybody else. I assumed that the value that I was buying at that time, the price was lower than what it would be the next year. But for me, it didn't matter. The home prices didn't matter as much as it mattered to other people because I was buying for all 5 profit centers.
Hit me with the 5 profit centers real quick.
Net rental income, which is positive cash flow. That's what, is going to keep these assets paying for themselves every single month. We've got tax savings, right? These incredible tax advantages that we get for this asset class. We got principal pay down. So my residents paying my loans down for me. It's really attractive. Then we've got home price appreciation, which we now understand how home price appreciation works, and we can talk a little bit more about that. But at that point, I just thought home values went up like everybody else in 2006. And then number 5, inflation hedging. honestly, I probably didn't understand inflation hedging back in the day.
I had two questions. Did you understand inflation hedging when you were 23?
I didn't understand it when I was 23, to be quite honest.
And was gully a popular term of kids your age at that time?
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe.
All right. Cool.
Probably. I wasn't the coolest kid at 23 anyway, so I use terms like gully.
Yeah.
So, in fact, I was just watching the movie called The Big Short, which actually I think is a really fantastic movie. It chronicles a lot of the housing collapse and all of the reasons behind that. But I remember one part in the movie, they were talking to a real estate agent in 2006 who was trying to sell a piece of property. And they said, "Oh, do you think values are going to go down? They just went down last month." She goes, "Oh, it's just a gully. It's just a gully." So apparently it was a term back in the day. Lest I digress. So I was so fired up about this in 2006. I thought things were going to continue to go up just like everybody else. But the key difference for me is that I had learned enough. I had been around people who had been successful in rental properties enough that the big differentiator for me was that I was buying properties that paid for themselves every single month. Whereas the rest of the country was also thinking that home values were going to go up, but they were buying $400,000 houses, hoping to sell those for $500,000 6 months later. And the payment on that $400,000 house that they were buying was much less than the rental income that could come in. So I remember at that time, people would say, "Oh, you're in real estate? What kind of houses are you buying?" And I would say, "Well, I'm buying below middle income housing and it's positive cash flow." And they would be like, "Oh, well, that doesn't look nearly as fun or as exciting." And for me, I just looked at it and I'm like, well, this is cash flow. Like, this is risk mitigation. Like, this is one of the 5 profit centers. The vast majority of other people investing at that time were speculating. They were hoping prices would go up, and that was their only way of making money.
Okay, got it. So when I'm listening to you right now, I'm hearing you knew the 5 profit centers. Most people were either overly, I guess it sounds like a combination of valuing home price appreciation only and also doing it in the short term, which we've learned that unless you're thinking about a full market cycle, then home price appreciation should not be one of the primary drivers. But when it is a full market cycle, it is appropriate for home price appreciation.
Exactly.
Full market cycle, as long as that positive cash flow and the other 3 profit centers are in line.
Yes.
Okay, cool. When you said right now, you mentioned very much rental property portfolio. Was that the key driver to start rental property portfolio, or were you like real estate and rental property portfolio is one piece of this?
Well, in the beginning, I was just coming from a job that I didn't enjoy, and I knew I needed to be able to stand this company on its own 2 feet very quickly. So coming out of the gates, I was more excited about flipping houses because I needed to generate enough income to pay my bills every single month. And I also wanted to prove to myself that I could do this business and actually buy a house and then sell it later. So, the real estate active business of JWB was doing any and all things, flipping, wholesaling, flipping high-end home, lower-end homes. And we did that in the absolute very beginning. We're really excited about it. Soon thereafter, once we sort of proved that to ourselves, it very much went to, all right, how do we start to build our own rental property portfolio? And so that's why from 2006 to 2008, we bought 32 rental properties for us to hold on to. Mm-hmm. And that was in addition to hundreds of other properties that we had flipped in one way, shape, or form.
Got it. So you had recapped before, you took a family loan to buy your first property. And then you all went out and started wholesaling and flipping to generate cash flow to live and to invest in long-term buy and hold rental properties.
Yes.
Was that the BRRR method that people were talking about at this point?
So that's a good point, because one thing that you just mentioned there, we flipped properties to generate income to basically pay our bills and to give our business operating capital. But we didn't need to use the income that we generated from flipping in order to buy rental properties, because we figured out a strategy for us to buy rental properties without putting any of our own money into it. And that was really unique, because you might say, listen, how do you buy 32 rental properties in the span of 2 years? I didn't come from money. I didn't come from a real estate background. In the beginning, Alex and myself, my business partner, Alex and myself, were borrowing our parents' retirement accounts to start this thing. So there was a lot on the line there. There's definitely not enough money in those retirement accounts to buy 32 rental properties and put down payments of 20 or 25% down on all those. So the way that we actually built this rental property portfolio is we became masters of debt. We understood how to raise private money, and we would go out and raise private money from a lender. And let's just say that we would pay them 10% on their money. And let's say that, we would buy a property for $50,000, and we would go to that private lender and say, hey, listen, we bought this house for $50,000. It needs another $25,000 in repairs. Will you lend us $75,000? Will you lend it to us for a year? And that lender would say, sure, if you'll pay me 10%, absolutely. We'll lend it to you for $75,000 or for 10% interest for a year. And so we would take that money, we would buy that house for $50,000. We would then use those $25,000 to go and renovate the home. We would then put a resident in the home. And then what we would do is go to a bank. We'd go to a big bank. And big banks, of course, love to lend on homes that are rented out. They've been doing this for decades and whatnot, and they have much lower rates for us. And so we would then refinance out that private lender. And let's just say that the numbers added up and we got a new loan for $75,000. Maybe the interest rate was 7%. We would refinance out that private lender, get their $75,000 back to them, plus the interest they earned. And then we would have this wonderful cash flowing asset that I didn't have to put any of my own money into, which was cash flowing at the end of the month. And the really cool thing is I returned that capital back to that private lender. And then what do you think I did after that?
Buy more property.
Yeah, I went to the next property that I could buy for $50,000 and went right back to that private lender and said, hey, I just paid you all this money back. Do you want to lend it again? And they said, yes, absolutely. And we did this over and over and over again to the tune of 30 to 40 times in the first couple of years. And that's how we built our rental property portfolio.
Awesome. So this is like 2006 to 2008, 2009.
Mm-hmm.
Then what happens?
So that model worked. What do you think that model is sort of dependent on there, Pablo?
I would say it's dependent on an attractive interest rate that you can borrow money at a cheaper rate than before.
Yeah, you got to have a bank on the back end who offers that attractive interest rate.
You got to have the money to borrow.
Yeah, you got to have the money, because what you have done there is, I have borrowed high interest debt with a balloon payment. And, if you don't have a bank on the back end to refinance out, well, you got a problem.
Yep.
And so, as we all know, what happened in 2008, the great financial crisis of 2008, what if you weren't in real estate at that time, what you might not realize is that overnight lending ceased. Between everything that was happening in Wall Street, overnight, people who were supposed to get loans that were going to close tomorrow instantly were just given rejection letters, and those loans that you were going to close, either refinancing or purchasing or whatever, just wasn't possible. And if it wasn't possible for normal everyday people, it definitely wasn't possible for real estate investors, and definitely not for real estate investors who started their company within the last 2 years and who were 23, 24 years old. It was like hard pass, which we didn't understand the risk of this strategy at that point. This strategy that I just shared with you is called the BRRRR method. Mm-hmm. Buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. That's what you may hear of the BRRRR method. We were doing the BRRRR method before they even put a BRRRR acronym together. That's how we did it.
Before it got cold.
Before it got cold. It was still hot when I was doing the BRRRR method. So we didn't really understand the risks that go along with the BRRRR method, but we understood them real quick when we got 10 denial letters for the loans that we were refinancing at that point. Because once we did this one time, instead of just having one lender that I was doing this with, well, I realized that this was going to work. And I said, I went and raised money from 10 other people. And now we had, call it $750,000 in loans, which were going to be due within a year that we were paying 10% interest on. Mm-hmm. And, if you don't have a back end lender there, you've got a big payment to make. And so this was a big deal for JWB. This was a moment of great stress. It was an inflection point for our business. I remember when we got those denial letters, and it was Adam Riegel and I, and we sat down, and up to this point, we had never really sold anything. Mm-hmm. We didn't sell rental properties at that point. We were really good at renting them out and doing the property management. We were starting to become really good at it, mm-hmm. but we had never packaged this to sell. So selling this rental property was not really an option for us. refinancing was no longer an option. And we looked at ourselves and we said, oh my goodness, we have to figure out, how to get out of this situation. How are we going to do this? And, nobody knew how to sell anything. We didn't know how to market anything. We didn't know how to sell anything. So those were some really tough moments for us. We just didn't know what to do.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're acquiring your own rental properties, and then you have this other bucket of properties that you were burring, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, those are the same.
It's the same. Yeah. Okay, cool. So it's the same. All right. So then this is like 2009?
Yeah, that's 2008 when the financial crisis happened. Yeah. So 2008 and 2009, we were starting to, I'll tell you what our strategy was to get out of this. But 2009 was we were taking a lot of lumps. We were losing a lot of money.
Yeah. So then strategy to get out of it.
Well, so as we were at this really low point of figuring out the challenges that we had, we said, okay, well, what's working well in our business? The active flipping part of the business ceased overnight. If people couldn't get loans out there, no homeowners were buying, so we couldn't flip those homes. If there was no lending out there, investors weren't also buying, so we couldn't wholesale those homes. So we sold a lot of those properties at losses. That was really difficult for us to do as a young business as well, because it's not fun to lose 20,000 or 30,000 or sometimes more on a property that you just renovated. But we understood, we had this long-term outlook, and we said, listen, capital in the business is the most important thing for us right now. Short-term losses, that's okay. We just need to have enough capital here to be able to pay our bills. So we took massive losses on a lot of our flips. Then we started to say, okay, well, what is working well in our business? We know that's not working well. And we started to look at our rental property portfolio. And as we were doing the BRRRR method, that was like a moment in time. But after and it is active while you're doing that, you're renovating it and all that good stuff. But once it's done, it's like set it and forget it, right? Like you've got this asset, you've got a long-term resident in place, and, it was just working well. Rent rates were really strong. We didn't have a lot of vacancies. We were just starting to figure out how to renew residents at a high rate. We knew that we were providing value there, and it wasn't taking a lot of our time once we would, bring that property through the process. And we looked at it and we're like, geez, let's look at the books here. Like, we're being told something. Our business for flipping properties is failing massively right now. Our rental property business, absent of this huge loan that we have to pay off, which I'll get to in just a second, absent of that, it's really working well. And the whole world around us is going up in flames, it feels like. But our rental property portfolio is working exactly as we designed, and it's not taking a lot of our time. So we're like, well, why don't we focus on that, right? What can we do there that might bring value to other people, other investors? And at the same time, we were 24 now at this time, or 25 at this time, and we had built up this portfolio of 30 to 40 rental properties. We were very active in our local real estate community. We had sort of built up kind of a presence just for being a few younger kids going into mainly an older networking group and just being young and, probably a little naive, but just not afraid to fail and just, being, it was easy for us to make friends. And so people were following us and saying, man, how do you guys own 40 rental properties? You're only 25. How do you do that? And so this was the first kind of marketing thing we were thinking about. We're like, maybe there's some interest there. There's some demand there. Listen, we didn't have a lot, so like that was our hot buyers list at that moment.
Any qualitative signal, go for it. Right?
We were searching for anything.
Yeah.
So we're like, all right, well, we know this works for us, and we also have the closest thing we can call it in built up demand is the people that are just kind of following along in our journey. And we said, what if we could package something together that would bring enough value that would make some of those people want to do what we're doing? How could we create this experience to make it easy for people to build a portfolio of 30 rental properties or 40 rental properties within a few years if they wanted to go that big? How could we do this? And so this was the genesis of turnkey rental property investing for JWB. It came out of necessity and survival and the darkest days in our company, but it was the marriage of a market opportunity that obviously we saw at that point and has grown, but it also was a marriage between how we love to handle investors' money, right? Real estate education for us was never really appealing. Felt like we could do it, but it wasn't as fulfilling. Like this concept of where we could earn trust from people. They could give us their money, and then we could return a lot more back to them through the purpose or through the process of building a rental property portfolio. It was natural to us.
Yep.
And we were like, okay, well, let's start to build this thing.
So let me distill a couple of things, right? What I hear is there was a time where everybody was getting in on everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like the biggest idiots were making money. You didn't say that, but I remember those times.
Yeah. Yeah. And we were one of those idiots in the beginning.
You were two of those idiots.
Yeah.
And you got in, the recession hits. It's uniquely a recession that affects the housing market, unlike every other recession ever.
Right.
So you weren't even accounting for recession coming, much less were you accounting for this complete outlier thing that hadn't happened in 100 years
right.
of housing losing value during a recession. That's only ever happened twice in history.
Right.
And once that happened, there was multiple things you were doing that you realized, well, this isn't going to work anymore, but there's this one thing that is still working, and it's working for me.
Mm-hmm.
So you decided to go all in on it. Essentially, you bet your future on it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the moral of this whole story. Everybody's caught up through 2010.
Mm-hmm.
What is it? I guess, can we just go real deep into what is it about? You mentioned this thing of like the whole world was telling me that my investments aren't working.
Right.
And we were like, nah, this one thing is working. Like, what is the difference between what everybody thought was happening and the reality of those 40 properties as opposed to everything else that was in your
Well, I was in a unique circumstance because I felt the pain that the rest of the world was feeling when I looked at my active business. And I realized two things. Number one, that I was taking massive losses for the properties that I was trying to flip, which is what the world was experiencing. And then number two, for those properties that were maybe higher end homes that we were trying to flip, like even if I couldn't sell those were costing me money every single month because they didn't cash flow positive. Those were speculating, so I felt the pain of that, which is what the world was feeling. But I also looked at my own rental property portfolio, and it was like peaceful. It was peaceful. It added to my quality of life. It didn't take away from my quality of life. But everybody else looked at that 40 rental property portfolio and they were like, oh man, I'm sure you're so sad that you did that. And I just, for a while, I just didn't understand. I was like, should I be feeling bad about this? Because that 40 unit rental property portfolio was producing positive cash flow. It was earning tax savings. My residents were paying my loans down for me every single month. Home price appreciation wasn't there, but that's the big thing. If you are not counting on home price appreciation in the short run, it honestly doesn't matter, right? I had a long-term outlook on this rental property portfolio. It was going to help me spend time with my kids, my future kids, in 15 years or in 20 years or 10 years or however that was going to work. So like, to me, the home price appreciation angle of it, if it had gone up 10 times, it wouldn't have affected my quality of life anyways. If it went down 30% like it did, it didn't matter because the rents were consistent. Even in the Great Recession, rents here in Jacksonville and in many places in the country were consistent. Vacancies were not high. So I remember just like this like dichotomy. I felt like there was the real world out there that was telling me how I should feel about it. And I was feeling the pain about flipping houses like everybody else. But then there was this like beautiful thing that we had built that was recession resistant. It was risk mitigated and it was working perfectly. And I tried to tell people that and they just didn't really understand or buy it or whatnot. And now finally I was just like, okay, cool. Well, we'll just keep managing this portfolio and thinking okay about it,
Yeah.
Well, the rest of the world is telling us that we should be fearful.
Got it. So what I'm hearing is there was multiple things to be in. The world is melting. There was this one thing that you were in that clearly provided, even in tough economic times, as long as you're preserving that occupancy, as long as you bought it in a way that was cash flow positive, you could look at home price appreciation the way that people look at the stock market, right? Like if my 401k goes down 20% right now for me, no big deal.
Right.
But in 30 years, I'm going to care.
Yeah.
Right. Or 17 years or whatever, right? Like 20 years, right? So as long as you were keeping that occupancy full, as long as you're keeping it cash flow positive, having the tax savings happening, as long as the short-term experience wasn't affecting your quality of life, you felt empowered to like stay with that
Mhm.
and go all in is basically what you're saying, because
When you-
you've now built a turnkey rental property.
Yeah,
business.
absolutely. We know the moral of the story is I
Yeah.
went all in there, but you brought up a good point of like, what was the stock market doing at that point in time too? Like it was really, this is why I also felt really good about my rental property portfolio and why I talk so much about risk mitigation is because the rest of the investing options in 2008 were terrible.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
people were losing left and right and flipping houses for sure, but in the stock market, right?
Yeah.
It was a painful time. So if you had any assets that were continuing to pay you money every single month and earn a return on investment, like you were in the minority. And I just fell in love with the fact that that's where we were for our rental properties, even in the worst of times. And that has stayed with me till today.
So knowing that the quality of life meant, so now we're at 2010, you've decided to go all in. You're going to start also selling people rental properties because that's the
Yeah.
lifeline to your business.
Right.
Knowing that the key to this thing is maintaining quality of life in the short term while it does this thing in the long term. And you were going all in. What was the move?
Well, so 2008 was the commitment to turnkey.
Yeah.
And 2008 and 2009 were, it was a painful time for the business. But we just looked at those as short-term losses, right? That was fine. The big thing for us was like refining and getting better at this experience of helping people buy rental properties. And we tried a whole bunch of things, and some of them worked really well, and some of them we stubbed our toes a little bit and all that. But at every moment, we were like, okay, how do we get better and how do we get better? One of the things that we looked at was property management. So if you think about our journey from property management for the first couple of years, call it 2006 to 2008, we managed all of our own rental properties. And during that time, we got high rent rates. We got high renewals, right? We even started to get long-term leases being signed. And once we got to about 40 rental properties, call it around 2008, we said to ourselves, listen, we've got a sizable portfolio here. Managing properties is not the best use of our time. It is not what we wanted to do, right? Again, 2008, we didn't really know we were going to become this turnkey company, right? We did what a lot of investors do. And we said, well, let's go and let's find a property manager and let's have them manage our own rental properties. And we had 40 properties. And so we interviewed a bunch. We found the best that we could find. And from that point forward, we were really disappointed in the property management team that we hired. And this was a portfolio of rental properties that we had managed for 2 years. So we knew the resident relationships and we knew that people should be renewing and we should be getting rent increases and long-term leases and long-term resident stays. And as soon as we put our properties with another property management company, guess what happened?
Not as high a renewal rate, not long-term leases.
Yeah.
High turnover.
High turnover, not getting rent increases, And we just couldn't figure it out. And we got every excuse under the sun. Oh, the resident just had to move or whatever, and they didn't want to sign a 2-year lease anymore. We had like 10 straight 1-year leases that were signed. We're like, how is that possible for people to only sign, 1-year leases, that many after we had signed so many 2-year leases, couldn't get rent increases, things of that nature. And we just said, this is not right. And we got really frustrated with it. And, at this moment, we were starting to gain some traction. We were starting to make some turnkey sales, right? 2008, 2009 is kind of where I'm going now. And during that time, we would refer people to a property management company. We would refer people to the same property management company that had our rentals. And it became very clear over that year that that was not the best thing for ourselves, for our rental property portfolio. And once we realized that was not the best thing for our clients. And beyond that, again, we've always had this long-term game, right? Again, we were 25, 26 at this point. So we knew we were going to be here for a very long time. And we said, if we really believe that this business model is going to work and is going to be sustainable and that this was going to be our hedgehog, then the single greatest part of that process has to be property management. And we came to the conclusion that nobody else was going to manage properties like ourselves. And we said, even though it wasn't something that we wanted to do early on, we were like every other deal maker out there in the beginning. We didn't necessarily want to do the property management. We looked at the business opportunity and we said, nobody else is going to do it to this standard. We're not going to have better returns on investment for our clients. We're not going to overperform like we expect to do, so that will have them come back, buy more properties for us. And we said, listen, guys, if we're going to try to sell 50 houses a year or 100 houses a year, which is what our intentions were at that point, we have to take property management in-house. We have to love property management. We have to look at this as an opportunity to control the entire investment for our clients. And we just felt like there was no other option.
Got it. So what I'm hearing is you became a consumer of something that you had practiced, and you realized, nobody does it as good as you do when you were the investor yourself. And like, if they don't have your same priorities, they're not going to perform at the same level.
Right.
And B, this is the key to success in the idea that I can sit and wait on home price appreciation as long as property management is performing.
Yes.
So you decided it's too big of a risk. It's too big of a, like you're not going to be able to provide the experience that you want to your clientele unless we control, or your own portfolio.
Yeah.
Unless you provide this thing. Now right now, as you positioned it, you told me, you're like, oh, we weren't getting long-term leases. We weren't doing, renewals. When you first started getting into property management, what was the journey there? Like, were you guys immediately like, well, we got to go back to long-term leases and renewals? Is that that was just obvious to you because you had done it before?
Well, yeah, we had 2 years of success managing properties before.
Yeah.
And so it was very easy for us to take it back and know that we were going to be able to perform like we were 2 years prior. We had some residents that, weren't prepared as well as we would have prepared them. So I'm sure there were some moments where it was, rough in the beginning for our own properties, but soon thereafter, right? Listen, they only signed short-term leases. So it wasn't long before those residents were going to, go and find another home to rent. And we started to get right back to what made us successful: long-term leases, focusing on renewals. And so much of like why we believe this is because we had so much of our own wealth right there. And that's why it made sense as well, beyond just the business opportunity. It's like, listen, if you want 40 rental properties to perform really well and to give you an experience that you're going to actually enjoy holding on to them for the next 10 years, 20 years, like we have, your property management team controls that experience. And so for us, it was an easily justifiable risk and expense for us to go down when you paired all that together.
So you knew you wanted long-term leases. You knew you wanted higher renewals. How did you at first, did you take it over and be like, well, I know what these guys are doing wrong? Like, or were you just like, I know what the output is, but what is the input that you have to put in? Like, what did you change immediately that drove higher leases, long-term leases and higher renewals? Or did it happen immediately and then evolve?
I mean, I think it happened immediately. Yeah. Right. Like, people told us that you couldn't sign long-term leases. Like that's the was it headwinds that we were facing there? Yeah. Headwinds. Yeah. Headwinds. There we go. Yeah. That was the headwinds that we were facing. People were like, you can't do this. You can't do this. So like property management, the way we have seen it even today is full of people that say, no, can't be done. Right. This is the way it's always been done. You're always going to sign 1-year leases, yada, yada, yada. And so we just took those properties back. And I remember it being very clear that it was the right decision because we were able to get long-term leases. We were able to get residents renewing at a really high rate. We were able to get rent increases. But I'll tell you the difference between 2010, which is when we officially started JWB Property Management in 2010, versus when my business partners and the employees that we had at that time were managing JWB's own rental property portfolio from 2006 to 2008. 2010 is when we, more or less, that's when we started to really focus on attracting high-level talent internally.
Okay.
That's when you look at some of the teammates that are leading our organization today. Some of those teammates,
the Jamie Crawfords of the world,
Jamie Crawford, Lauren Traxler, right? Adam Eisman, our CEO, he joined our team in 2010. Yeah. Right. So we realized that our ability to do property management and to do it well at scale, and for us to sell and provide this experience at scale, we needed to have the best talent that we could get on the bus. And it's really funny. We joke about it now. And if you talk to Lauren, who runs our client service team, or if you talk to Adam or Jamie or any of the veterans here who've been a part of JWB for so long, like the recruiting pitch to join JWB in 2010 was not very attractive. I'll tell you, compensation wasn't great then. It's not like we had this thriving business at that point. We found great people who took a tremendous risk themselves to follow and believe in what we believe and join the mission here. And we're forever grateful.
Why do you think they took that risk?
I think people are attracted to the idea of, being a part of something that's greater than themselves, and to do it with people that you just thoroughly enjoy surrounding yourself with, that challenge you. And we always had that component. Those two components are things that we always had. We didn't have much else, but I bet it was that.
So I think it's obvious, right? Like the team and like you and Alex and Regal, all great guys to be around that treat people with respect and listen and hold space and see you. What was the mission bigger than yourselves at that point?
Well, we were trying to redefine the client service experience for people owning rental properties. And, service is at the core of why I think you all will choose to do business with JWB, because flat out, you can earn higher returns on paper by going somewhere else. But service is a combination of, are you actually going to earn those returns on investment? And then are you going to enjoy this experience for the next 10 years or 20 years, as long as we're managing your money? And if you look at rental properties overall, the biggest reason why people don't have success in rental properties is not because the numbers don't, at least make sense, or the opportunity doesn't make sense. It's because they have a poor experience. So we really set out on this mission and said, how do we redefine this? How do we turn this asset class into something that people can enjoy versus something that people invest in begrudgingly?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Denny Davis puts a great thing in the Q&A that I completely agree with. He puts, Pablo, they took the risk because Gregg, Alex, and Adam were LEADERS leaders who preached and stressed organizational culture, which is a very attractive group to be a part of. Denny, you're 100% right, man. So my involvement with JWB and seeing this and seeing the value of it has completely redefined how I recruit talent to my team, right? Like I have implemented the core values call outs in my meetings that I've learned from your meetings. I use those meetings in order to recruit talent to my team, right, the same way that you do it. So Denny, I think you hit it right on the head. I'm going to ask you one more thing as far as the property management journey, and then I want to get into a little bit more of this Q&A. Getting long-term leases sounds like nobody was asking for them, right? Yeah. So you did that. Yeah. What about increasing renewal rates? What was the tactic there that drove higher renewal that people weren't doing?
Flat out, we think of renewals like a sales opportunity, and we train our team to think of it as a sales opportunity. We mold our residents to expect to be here for years and years and years and expect to renew. We track and we measure accordingly. And nobody else in property management does that. Now, a few people do, because this space is becoming more institutionalized, which is a good thing for everybody. But definitely nobody back in the day would train, mold their clients, right? Market to them effectively, right? And so, it's very much not one thing that you do. It's not one phrase that you say. It's this culture of renewals. Yeah. It's a culture of referrals. It's things that work in unison to provide so much value for that resident on the other end that you don't, in essence, you don't even give them a choice. Like, why would they ever choose to leave? It's expensive to leave. Why? Nobody likes to move. If you can just provide so much value through that culture, then that's what we set out to do.
Love it. Right. So what I'm hearing as far as like from last episode to this episode, last episode was kind of like the birth of like getting into real estate, and then the kick in the teeth. Yeah. And then the kick in the teeth of like, welcome to the game, kid. Right. And then finding really like your role in the world, right? Like the thing that really, really works well, this like asset of long-term buy and hold rental properties that you can stack up. And as long as you are ensuring for occupancy, aka that, which ensures for cash flow and tax savings and principal pay down and principal pay down, then you could play the long game with the appreciation game that people were at that time playing the short game and getting bit by, right? So then you decided, okay, so this is the asset. You were a couple of young fellas building a business, and you realized that it had worked so well for you that you could then provide this to others. But in order to do that, you had to ensure that short-term pleasure for the long-term success. And you decided that the move was really specialize in property management based on the idea that you had done it before, then you outsourced it in order to go do other things and realize that you were doing it better than everybody else was. And you had the audacity to say, we're going to change the game. So now what we need is really high level client and to focus on these metrics that people that aren't doing it by your side don't even realize that are important and or don't care.
Right. When you said high level, you meant high level talent.
High level talent.
Yeah, I think you said high level client, but
high level talent.
Yep.
Correct. High level talent, right? Like get the best people on the seats of the bus
absolutely
that you can in order to completely change an industry,
yep.
essentially. And that was the pitch to these really high level people that at that point were just like, well, these guys seem pretty cool, and I got to change an industry.
Yeah, we were going to be a part of something special in a number of different ways. And going back to that decision of 2008 as well. I want to say thank you to all of you for reaching out and saying something about the Ernst & Young Award. And many of you heard the speech that I gave when we won the award, and it was talking about being crazy and being called crazy. And in 2008, we were called crazy by, my own kind real estate investors. They were calling us crazy for, doubling down on systems and doubling down on talent and people. And, buying more properties like we did. And, for us, we just had this long-term view, and we just said, listen, we understand how market cycles work. We know that real estate is going to come back because people need a place to live. We didn't know if it was going to be 5 years, 10 years, 20 years or whatnot, but we knew it was going to come back, and we were going to be here for as long as it took. Mm-hmm. And we said, if we can double down, hire the best people we possibly can, invest in our systems, refine our property management abilities, refine our marketing and our sales strategy, how much farther ahead of our competition are we going to be when real estate does come back? And that was our big thesis. And that's what's played out really well.
How convenient that we brought the hardware back for this show, despite the fact that you didn't want it here, so we could showcase the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award. You're welcome, Greg.
Thank you, buddy.
So, all right, cool, man. Yeah, that's profound, right? So I see this period of 2010 to 2014 as finding your way and building out this very, very core part of your business. And I think this is a great transition to the Q&A, mm-hmm. where Miguel Angel asks, when did you realize that you made more money building and selling than managing rentals? And I want to say that as in it sounds like at this moment you had your 40 and you weren't really in acquisition mode anymore. You were selling these and realizing that was your core business model. And we can kind of teaser to the idea that it was after this period that you decided to go all in and build 300.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we kind of separate, there's acquisitions that we would make as inventory to package this model up and then sell to a turnkey investor. And then there's acquisitions that we would be adding to JWB's portfolio, right? From 2010 to 2014. Right. We were good with our rental property portfolio. We built it up to like 40 properties that we held on to for ourselves. We were just in this mode of how can we create this amazing experience, this amazing business? And, the world was a tough place in 2010, 2011 too. I mean, we still hadn't hit the bottom of pricing. So, there was fear and trepidation out there. So we did not buy additional rental properties for our own portfolio. We felt really good about the 40 that we had. In 2010 and in 2010 through 2014, it was all about the acquisition and how to build this turnkey experience.
Nice. Okay.
But to answer Miguel Angel's question, when did we realize? Well, his question is, when did we realize that we make more money building and selling versus managing rental properties? I mean, it's just about, I think we understood the fundamentals of it early on. When you are buying, renovating and selling something for a profit, you should earn a lot more money for you to take on that risk of doing that. You should earn a lot more money that day than you would earn in a year of managing a rental property, right? Like, for example, we might call it $2,000 or $2,500 a year when you talk about what we earn per property on the revenue side for managing a property. And then you have expenses that come out of that and all that good stuff. So, you need to earn a lot more than $2,500 if you're going to take the risk to put capital together and try to sell a house. So I think we always knew that we would make more money if we sold those properties. But the beautiful thing that we didn't realize when it came to starting this property management company is that, most real estate investment companies, most development companies, they can do quite well, but they live this up and down variable income and cash flow situation. It's the hardest thing about managing a development business because you have potentially big pops that come in, but they don't come in every single month, and JWB in its early years was very much that same way, right? We would sell a bunch of houses in one month, and then next month, maybe we wouldn't sell as much. And so you still have those same amount of expenses that happen, and you're just constantly, going up and down. What property management did for us is it created stability. It creates stability. We manage 4,500 homes now. We earn, $100 a home or whatever in gross revenue from those properties, right? That's very sticky, and it happens each and every single month. So it gives our business a lot more security, gives us the confidence to hire 100 of the best teammates that we have, and to know that no matter what happens on a daily or monthly basis here, that the revenue is coming in to support those people. So property management has become a really wonderful balancing act to the variability of a real estate business. And I won't say that we knew that in the beginning, but we learned that very early on as we started to increase our properties under management.
Cool. Awesome, man. Great answer. Roger Evans has a question. He's asking, how did you guys manage property maintenance in the beginning, and how did you keep those costs low or costs down?
Yeah. It was our own properties. So, we watched it like a hawk, and by watching it like a hawk, we understood the questions that we should ask and the systems that we had in place, so that we could then take those systems and that training to then train, our team now of managing those same costs for you. We also spent a lot of time, looking at how could we create a win-win for our vendor base as well. One of the things that we do that almost nobody in the construction industry does is we pay every single week for our construction base, our team of vendors out there, every single week. Now we start millions of dollars of construction every single month, and there's 400 active builds that are going on right now. And there's 4,500 properties that are having things that break. Okay. So for you to run the accounting to be able to pay your vendors every single week is a big undertaking. Yeah. And our accounting team does an incredible job. Well, one of the reasons we do that is because that was a pain point for our vendor base. And they were used to working for other construction companies, and they may get paid on time, they may not get paid on time. So we said, well, listen, this is something that we can do really well, and this can help us retain great talent on the vendor base side. Mm-hmm. And then we also looked at the volume that we started to do. It started to be where we managed 100 properties and 200 properties and 300 properties. And we started to create a way where we could.
I think we should get to this on the second side of it, man, because Roger wanted to know how to do it. I feel like Roger's trying to figure out how to keep his own maintenance costs down.
Gotcha.
It sounds like early on, I love seeing you excited.
I know, I get so excited.
I know, you're about to talk for another 12 minutes and I'm getting hungry.
Thank you.
So it seems like Roger was just talking about early on. It just sounds kind of like you just did it.
Yeah, you're right.
You just kind of do it, right? Like
you're right.
You gotta think long-term, think about where you're going to be in time, keep the maintenance cost, do it right. And eventually you're going to build that scale.
Yeah, you're right.
Oh, that's a good answer. Danny Davies has been waiting for this for a couple of weeks now. How did the name Jacksonville Wealth Builders come about?
Oh man, I don't know if I can keep this a short story, but I'll try my very best. Okay. So you got to picture this. Now, the name of our original company was Progress Home Buyers. Yeah. Progress Home Buyers, when we were focused on buying undervalued properties for ourselves so we could turn into rental properties, and for others so we could turn them into cash flow investments. And we did all of this marketing under that name, Progress Home Buyers. Well, in 2010, we started our property management company, and we called it Peace of Mind Property Management. Mm-hmm. And then soon after, as well, for 2008, 2009, 2010, we started to figure out how to sell this turnkey rental property experience. And we marketed that under the name Jacksonville Wealth Builders. And so we had these three companies. That's the same guys. It's the same company. It's the same decision makers all under one roof. But I remember going out into the local networking groups or whatnot, and I heard somebody say, well, listen, I really love working with, Jacksonville Wealth Builders. Have you heard anything about that Peace of Mind Property Management Company? Or how about Progress Home Buyers? It was really great working with them. You ever heard anything about Jacksonville Wealth Builders? Nobody knew who we were. They knew who we were, but they didn't know that the three companies were the same. And so, and then also at that point, Jacksonville Wealth Builders was starting to become the thing that we were most known for. It was becoming our hedgehog in 2010 and 2012. We sold 174 properties in 2012. And that was really kind of like our moment where we really just scaled up and kind of like hit a big milestone. So it became very clear that Jacksonville Wealth Builders was the thing that we were most known for. But Jacksonville Wealth Builders in a name is long. And if you want to be known for one thing, you can't be Jacksonville Wealth Builders Home Buyers and Jacksonville Wealth Builders Property Management. So we aligned it all under the Jacksonville Wealth Builders name. And we said, that's where JWB comes from. It's not the initials of some random owner out there. It's just Jacksonville Wealth Builders. And now we have it all under the JWB family of companies, which is JWB Home Buyers, JWB Property Management, JWB Real Estate Capital, so on and so forth. And that was the best I could do to condense it.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
High five.
All right, sweet. I feel like you're just telling me that because I screwed up the original one.
I think that's the best that you have ever condensed. I was like, all right, we're getting out of here. I'm going to start eating lunch at 2. Real quick from Raj Bantu. What was your criteria of keeping properties in the JWB portfolio versus selling the properties to investors? Was it price range, property size, location? At that point, what was the criteria? No,
I mean, the 40 rental properties that we purchased were largely from 2006 to 2008. And then we pretty much just kind of stopped and just really focused on, number one, how are we going to survive in the beginning? Yeah. And then how are we going to build this turnkey rental property experience? So while we stopped buying our own our properties to turn into our own rental properties, we continued to actively buy inventory for JWB clients. Mm-hmm. And so it was very easy. Everything we were buying, we were selling as a turnkey property.
It sounded like at that point, you really need to focus on building a business and, pay for yourself short term. And you had already kind of like put your chips into the 17-year plan of like the 40 properties.
Yeah.
And this is a perfect transition to the idea that now on the back end of this, we just went over 2010 to 2014. 2014 is when you started just going ham and buying rental properties. So on the next installment of how GC has built his portfolio, we're going to talk about that period of 2014 to now. Right? Like just catch us up to when you became a $150 million company, won Entrepreneur of the Year awards, but really how you ended up going really, really big on buying your own portfolio and what all that means. But I thought this one was good, man.
This has been awesome. I have so much fun just rehashing these old days. And cool. I love the questions that you guys asked me. Like, how did we think about that? I'm digging this. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you guys.
I'm going to call out Nancy Ruano, who was new to the call. I have a feeling she's going to be coming back because she is now emailing with Madison and is going to figure out, what it takes. So long story short, Nancy, you don't have to be an accredited investor. You don't have to write this is just like a matter of, does it make sense for your own portfolio? So I think you're going to get a ton of value, and it's really, really cool that you came in this way. So really fun call today. And, Jerry,
you want to stay, don't you?
I do want to stay, but I'm also,
We can start off the call on Thursday and answer Jerry's question.
Yeah, Jerry, on Thursday, we have the JWB Rental Income Property of the Week.
Week.
Where we dive into an actual property, and we're going to start that call with Miguel Angel's question of how did you learn what locations you wanted to invest? Mm-hmm. And also Jerry's question that is for first-time investors that have less than $60K to invest, but are in their 40s and want to replace a 6-figure income in 7 to 10 years. How long does it typically take to recoup the initial investment money, $60K, to reinvest it again and another rental investment? That's actually a perfect question for the JWB Rental Income Property of the Week.
Quick.
So this has been super duper fun. Jerry, if you can't join us on Thursday, just shoot Madison an email. She can share it in the chat. We'll send it to you directly, that question that you just asked.
You can let him off the hook. He needs to be here on Thursday. Jerry wants to attend. Come on, Jerry. Come to the dark side.
You know what? It is such a big ask for people to come here, which is why I'm blown away by the fact that we've had 53 people with us this whole call. We never take it for granted that you take time out of your day in the middle of a Tuesday, middle of the work week to spend time with us, listen to me ask GC questions, listen to GC rehash stuff and give advice, ask the amazing questions that really drive the value for this show, make friends with each other in the chat, show up to meetups here where we went 70 deep a couple of weeks ago of just friends that have known each other in Zoom for months. And that's why if you're listening on the podcast or watching on YouTube, you know what you got to do. You got to go to nyais.com, register, just put in your calendar, show up one of these days, become a part of this awesome tribe of really, really great people that are helping each other out. And man, I just thank you from the bottom of my heart for letting me sit here and do this because this was an awesome show. GC, I'll give you last words.
I love what we have created here. It is all of you who make this community so strong. So I hope everybody will come and join and be a part of this. I want to say a special thank you to Jerry, special thank you to Nancy, special thank you to all of the first timers here, either on the show or the first time that you said something in the chat. We love you all just joining this experience. And yeah, man, I'm excited about Thursday. We'll see you guys on the next one.
I'm excited about Thursday. I'm copy and pasting the questions into the notes document. And for Thursday, you just got to remember one thing. If you want to build an awesome rental property and, get to this portfolio level, you can't think like an average investor. Don't be average.